Hi everybody. So a few of the questions I've been getting recently are around why my philosophy around getting the front leg well advanced of the back leg at back foot contact is important. Now, for me, I'm not saying it's right to do it that way, it's just my philosophy. I know that there are many athletes that land at back foot contact, so if we consider a right-handed thrower, the land at back foot contact, the left leg is sort of tucked behind the back leg, so in like almost like a galloping position. Some of them it's just slightly ahead, but the front leg's still bent. Various different kind of iterations of where the front leg or the left leg is, in my case, are at back foot contact. The reason why I am a big fan of the front leg or the left leg being well advanced of the back foot contact is for a number of reasons. From a biomechanical perspective, we know if we look at the data particularly from the 95 World Championships, where Zelezny won the gold, throwing in excess of 89 meters, the time between his back foot contact and his front foot contact was I think was 0.09 of a second, and I'll put up the biomechanical data now within this video. And everybody else's was significantly slower than that. So when they did a correlation graph between time between back foot contact and front foot contact and the release velocity of the javelin, there's a high correlation between the two. Now that makes sense if you think about it, because what we're trying to do as athletes and as coaches is to get our athletes to continue accelerating, or at least minimize the deceleration, because we know that all athletes are decelerating at this point into the throw. So in terms of coaching messages, we're telling athletes to continue accelerating. In reality, what we're saying is, don't slow down, or try and minimize the slowdown. But it's really important for us that we elicit a response from our athletes whereby they land on back foot contact, and then the time lag between back foot contact and front foot contact is as short as we can possibly make it. Therefore, purely from a mechanical perspective, for me as a coach, it makes sense that when we land at back foot contact here, that our front leg is advanced broadly in this kind of a position. So, because the time it takes to get from that position to the ground, as opposed to this position to the ground, is a little bit longer. It's not long in absolute terms, of course, it's probably going to increase the time between back foot contact and front foot contact. But in javelin terms, that's significant, because what it's showing is it's showing a significantly greater deceleration than somebody that perhaps doesn't have their front leg in a better position. So I kind of like the athlete to land, whether they're side on or more front on with the back foot, I kind of like the athlete to land with the front leg well advanced of the back leg, so then the time lag between back foot contact and when the back foot lands and the front foot hits the ground is significantly shorter. That in turn then should have a positive impact on the release velocity of the javelin, and we know that that's the most important factor in terms of distance thrown, because there have been loads and loads of studies that suggest exactly that. So that's kind of why I think the way that I do. What I'm not saying is that landing here, like with the foot here or in other positions, is wrong. It's just a different way of thinking about it, and I'm quite certain that those coaches and the athletes that do that, they'll have a rationale as to why they do it that way. I do know that athletes that have got significantly greater range of movement in their upper body, so for example, in extension through their thoracic spine, in rotation through the thoracic spine, in external rotation of the shoulder, in shoulder flexion, those athletes can probably get away with not being in the position that I described in terms of the feet when they throw, because they can make up for it because they've got great range of movement elsewhere. So the impact of being a little bit slower from back foot contact to front foot contact is diminished a little bit, because they can pull on the javelin longer because they're capable of leaving your arm in a longer position. So I hope that clears a few things up. What I'm not saying when I post on Instagram or on YouTube or anything around certain philosophical things that I believe in, it's generally underpinned by some sound biomechanical thought processes. But as I've mentioned a number of times, we are athlete-centered, coach-led, but science-aware. Science is just an awareness of understanding why you might think the way that you do. But we're human beings, we come in all shapes and sizes, we all do things in a slightly different way. But you know, I've often said it that if you don't believe in something, you'll fall for everything. And so that is just my belief in that particular technical part of the throw. So I hope that was useful, and anyone's got any questions, by all means, give me a shout.